Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on weird and true mysterious stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Would you like even more content? Here's my Patreon. Now onto the stories. Case file number 1153, written by HamBroth, the enigmatic blue figure. I think I was in 7th grade at the time, and it was around 3:30 or 4 p.m. in the afternoon. I was watching the post-school cartoon lineup with Rescue Rangers and DuckTales and all that stuff. My mom is nowhere to be seen because she'd just run off to I don't know where after my dad died, and I was left to my own devices with dinner. Usually I make microwave popcorn. That's what I got up to do this time. My room and the kitchen are both down at the very end of a really long hallway that at the middle point connects to an alcove that had the front door. I'm crossing the hallway from my bedroom to the kitchen and realize there's a figure standing in the hallway exactly halfway down, as though it had just come in through the front door. I stop and look at it, and it's there looking at me too. Now, this thing didn't have any details to the way that ghosts do in movies. It was a dark blue, opaque shape the size of a full-grown man. You could make out a head and limbs, but not hair or eyes and mouth or anything like that. I wasn't scared of it in the slightest. I just stood there and stared at it for a prolonged time because it was the freaking middle of the afternoon and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Eventually, I started to think this is a bit weird. Why is this thing in my house and why is it just staring at me? So in my head, I think the words, "Go away," at it. I've never had a thought that felt like that one before. It was like I had said it out loud. It had weight behind it. The figure immediately turned and ran out of sight into the front door alcove. I ran down the hallway to the alcove too and found it empty. I spent several minutes standing there questioning my own senses and whether that had really happened and what was that thing, or was I going crazy? Then I went back down the hallway and made my popcorn. Case notes for file 1153, the enigmatic blue figure. So immediately when you described the thought you had, how it had weight to it, when you told them to leave, my mind connected to a past story involving an alien encounter in a desert. A few actually, where people describe a telepathic linking. You speak words, and the alien or entity, if you prefer to call it, understands and hears you, quote unquote, and you can understand it at least in its intent. Same description back then too, no fear at all, nothing to fear. My guess is there are biological prototypes they're testing how effective they can be in functioning on the ground and around other humans. They want to study us in real time, which involves blending in. There was also a story about a weird character that was actually inside a company, and the person meeting him knew something was off. He wasn't real, I guess. So I think they are among us, and they're testing different prototypes and telepathic linking with us, which I imagine they do with each other effortlessly, but linking with the human mind is different. It also reminds me of Slender Man too, but I think that's inspired from this weird reality we live in. Case file number 1154, written by VeshWolfe, the spinning stick of mystery. Two strange anomalies. First, I was driving home from work through some brief unplanted farmland, winter and all that, and saw about a 3 to 4 foot stick about 15 feet off the ground. Now, I could see it at a good distance away, but assumed some farmer kids got it stuck in some sort of wire or something that I couldn't see from a distance. Well, as I approached it, I could see that it was beginning to spin in the air exceedingly fast, only it wasn't connected to or stuck on anything, just a stick/branch spinning in the air, glitching the hell out. Second, a few months ago, my wife and I were doing laundry and getting our daughter to bed. As I walk up the stairs and glance into the master bedroom, I see something peek from around the stationary wooden French door. By something, I mean something. It was about 3 feet tall, had dog and cat ears, and it was covered in brown and white fur. The thing and I made eye contact for a split second when it ducked behind the door as I jumped up the steps 3 at a time. When I got to the master bedroom, nothing was there, naturally. Case notes for file 1154, the spinning stick of mystery. So when objects or animals get stuck in the sky, usually I chalk that up to space-time anomalies, particularly focused on manipulating the time element. In this case, it strikes me more as a universal instability moment, Those cases where gravity doesn't work properly, like a table lifts up and slams back down, or in this case even disabling friction. Otherwise, the stick would require a constant input of energy to be spinning, even without gravity affecting it, because it would be constantly bumping into all those air molecules. So somehow, either there was something inputting energy, something was physically spinning it, or was it just able to bypass the air molecules and not impart kinetic energy from it while banging into them, which doesn't seem to make sense, like it was phasing through them, but still interacting with light. It's very odd indeed. Universal instability makes more sense here. The laws of physics simply weren't applying it to it, as they should have. The other possibility is that this is some kind of test. Maybe the military, but it seems like an odd location to do that for the military. So if it was a test, it would be alien, most likely. Or maybe even like a spirit, trying to train themselves like Dean was, when he was a ghost. Case file number 1155, written by Anonymous. The 1,000,000-to-1 Mystery. It was a 1,000,001 shot. While traveling for work from Orlando, I saw a handsome red-headed guy. I felt immediately and completely drawn to him while we were in line for security. I was stuck in the never-ending laneway behind him and never caught up. He ended up on my departing plane, and when we landed at the connection in Atlanta, he deboarded and disappeared before we could speak. Continued on my flight to Norfolk, Virginia, rented a car and drove 45 minutes away to the hotel where my company meeting was being held. Later that night, I was walking down the stairs of the hotel to the bar when the guy was standing at the bottom landing. Our eyes met, we smiled widely, and I firmly stated, "Well, there you are." We ended up at the exact same hotel, over 800 miles away from where we disembarked. How does that happen? We laughed, had a great conversation, and then he just awkwardly said, "Well, nice talking with you," and ran off. Totally confused, I thought for a minute and said to hell with it. Went to the front desk with my one business card, wrote on the back, and asked for the receptionist to deliver it to his room, but I only had his first name. She said, "There's 2 Andrews here. What do you want me to do?" I replied, "Well, just flip a coin and choose. No worries either way." He called me the very next day, and we dated for a couple of months. He was beautiful, powerful, intelligent, successful, and just wonderful in every way. Recently divorced after over a decade, I was the first woman he went out with since high school. We separated as I wanted to have a child while he was done after his 2 boys with his ex. Our time together was great for the both of us. How we came together has to be the strangest and most fate-driven story I can tell. Orlando has 850 flights a day, a 0.0011% chance he was on my flight. Atlanta has 2,700 flights, the connection, daily, so that alone was a 0.00037% chance we were going to the same destination. Additionally, there are 54,200 hotels in all of the US, a 0.00019% that we would end up at the same hotel. The chances of all that aligning? 1 in a million at least. So tell me, how in the world can this happen? Case notes for file 1155, the 1,000,000-to-1 Mystery. Sorry to hear that in the end it didn't work out. Kids can indeed be a breaking point. Now I'm thinking about Monica and Richard from Friends. They had the same issue. Of course, it's fiction, but it's a story that does happen. People get together and they don't immediately discuss if they want kids, and then, turns out that one person does and the other doesn't, or maybe they can't have them, and that causes an issue. Understandable, but very unfortunate. We can't give up on what we want, or we'll end up resenting the other person down the road, even if we think we won't immediately. Eventually you will. It's like a seed that plants and grows and festers, and it's not a good seed. Maybe it was important for you to understand what you wanted most in life. Maybe you weren't quite aware of it. And this was all part of that necessary journey. One more domino falling, and millions more to come. Still beautiful, in my view. And now time for the quote of the day. The hardest thing in the world to understand is the income tax. Albert Einstein. I just love this quote because it's Albert Einstein. And yes, this was the code as it was, 50, 60 years ago. And yeah, I can't imagine what it is today. Personally, I don't agree with income taxes at all. I think there shouldn't be any. think the fair tax makes much more sense. Not that I think any taxes really make any ethical sense, but that's a different discussion, I guess. I think in the end, making it as simple and as unobtrusive for people in their lives as possible would be best. As it stands now, most people work like 3 months, the first 3 months of the year, entirely for the government. That's crazy. And the craziest thing to me about that is that no one seems to care. Isn't that crazy to anyone else? And like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.